Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei gained 19 as power. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The Eternal Kings were those who stood at the apex of power above all races, even greater than the gods. Their purpose was to protect homeostasis, the creative entity responsible for the worlds and the maintainer of balance. Millennia ago the Eternal Kings fought a dark being that called itself Hidiak, an entity that sought only the destruction of life and fed on living things. After the battle the Eternal Kings sealed Hidiak in a separate dimension, but they suffered losses and betrayals. 5 of them were tempted by the darkness and sided with it. The 5 loyal kings who remained scattered across different worlds hunting for traces of the traitors, all except Algin, the Eternal King of Devastation and leader, who stayed by homeostasis. Elsewhere, the Eternal King of Dreams, known as the Great Red, traveled through a dimensional rift in his beast form searching for the body of his companion, the Eternal King of Destruction, Trihexa. After the battle Trihexa's soul had been separated from his body, turning the body feral and dangerous. In his beast form the Great Red had caused upheaval wherever he went. His search led him to a dimension where he encountered Ophis, the dragon goddess of infinity, who was watching over a very weakened being who had apparently used almost all of his power to create a seal. The Great Red approached. The Great Red identified Ophis as the dragon goddess of infinity and asked what she was doing and who the weakened being was. Ophis confirmed her identity and explained that the weakened being was called Elohim, who was known as a god of angels in that world. The Great Red said he detected a familiar energy within Elohim. Ophis explained that this was because Elohim was one of the 2 sons of the late Eternal Queen of Light. The Great Red noted that Elohim had inherited his mother's mystic moon eyes. Ophis added that the other brother was also considered a god and had inherited his body. Elohim had apparently suffered a mortal wound in a confrontation and used almost all his power to create the seal. Ophis explained that though others might try to save him, he was near the end. The Great Red expressed pity but observed that Elohim seemed to be responding. Elohim recognized the Great Red and identified himself, saying that he had sealed a gigantic black dragon. The Great Red asked if the dragon was Trihexa, and Elohim confirmed that he had sealed Trihexa but had exhausted nearly all his energy in the process, at the cost of his own life. The Great Red understood that leaving the dragon free would have caused great harm to that world. Ophis reflected that Elohim had been willing to sacrifice himself to preserve peace, even for races with which he had been at war. Elohim recounted that when the celestial dragons intervened they made a truce with the demon lords to stop them, but many leaders had died in the fighting. Thanks to that sacrifice he had been able to seal the celestial dragons and Trihexa. The Great Red warned that if Elohim died, the angels and other creations he had made would vanish, and he asked if Elohim accepted that. Elohim said he wished his angels could live, but he had little he could do now. He only hoped that with the loss of the leaders the demons and fallen angels would find peace. Ophis judged that response unwise. The Great Red noted that demons were a greedy race and, though weakened, might attempt something later. The Great Red then sensed another dragon approaching. A voice identified itself as Meraxes, one of the 4 dragon emperors and the Emperor Dragon of Balance. The Great Red acknowledged her as the Emperor Dragon of Balance. Meraxes greeted the Great Red and asked what had brought them to that place. She said she had come looking for the red and white celestial dragons. Ophis said without emotion that the celestial dragons had been defeated and their souls sealed. Meraxes expressed that she had not expected them to be defeated but felt they deserved it for reckless fighting and destruction. Meraxes noticed Elohim lying nearby and asked who he was. Elohim explained that he had sealed the dragons but had been gravely wounded and was dying. The Great Red clarified that Elohim had used most of his life energy to create a seal for Trihexa's body. Meraxes reacted to the revelation that Trihexa was the Eternal King of Destruction. Ophis added that Elohim had hoped that by sealing the celestial dragons and Trihexa's body, he could form an alliance among the races. Meraxes called that admirable for a god. Elohim expressed regret that his death would cause his angels to disappear. Meraxes asked where he had sealed the souls. Elohim explained that their souls had been placed into artifacts called sacred gear, intended to be given to humans through a system he had designed, but that system might vanish along with him. The Great Red observed that the sacred gear might fall into the hands of some race. Meraxes said she was impressed that Elohim had done all that for a peace that might never come. Ophis confirmed that Elohim and his brother had learned such ideals from their mother. Meraxes asked who their mother was, and Ophis answered that she had been the late eternal Queen of Light. Meraxes expressed admiration and understood how they had defeated the two celestial dragons. The Great Red said that was all he could do. Meraxes asked if anyone could help Elohim. The Great Red replied that Elohim had no vital energy left and would soon fade. Meraxes then proposed that she bind her soul with Elohim so he would have enough energy to remain in that world. The assembly fell silent at Meraxes's words. Ophis questioned the idea, noting that Elohim's body was heavily damaged and might not withstand the burden of another soul. Meraxes suggested sealing part of her essence into the sacred gear, as she had done when binding with Draig and Albion. The Great Red asked if she was certain. Once done, they would be united for eternity. Meraxes expressed admiration for the others' resolve for justice and acknowledged that it had been her duty to watch them. She felt partly responsible and thought the future would be interesting. Great Red proposed adding some of his flesh and Ophis's aura to complete the work. Ophis conceded that she had no alternative. Great Red asked about Elohim. As he approached and saw no response, Great Red noticed Elohim already fading. He hurried, taking the last of Elohim's energy and adding his own to forge a sacred gear in the form of a collar set with a central gem. The blue and white dragon Meraxes drew near and began to merge with the collar. Ophis channeled her power into Elohim to sustain him, and the collar shifted claws on both halves, one side white and the other blue, the gem glowing blue with a white core. They fused the dying body of Elohim, infused with Ophis's energy, into the sacred gear. A white radiance erupted and then vanished. Ophis asked what had happened. Great Red explained that their souls were now bound for eternity and that Elohim would likely reincarnate in another being. Ophis asked when this would occur, and Great Red replied that it was impossible to say precisely. It could take days, weeks, or years. Setting that aside, Great Red said that now that he had found his companion's body, he would seek the soul to return it. He instructed Ophis to go to the human world and wait for Elohim's reincarnation. Ophis resisted, asserting that the rift was her territory and she would not leave for a noisy, tedious realm. Great Red countermanded her defiance with an order: go, watch for the reincarnation, and protect the new host until they could defend themselves. He then unleashed a tremendous surge of energy that expelled Ophis through a dimensional breach and sent her to the human world. Great Red resolved next to find Trihex's soul and to search for one worthy to inherit Nineteena's legacy, the eternal king of knowledge. Chapter 1. A New Life and a New Sister? The Bansuyudii makes her entrance. After Issei pursued Ophis's rescuer Shalba into the dimensional rift, the two engaged in one final confrontation. During the clash, Shalba released an arrow tainted with Samael's blood that struck Issei and destroyed his physical body. Issei found himself in the rift, unable to feel his body. The last clear memory he had was defeating Shalba and then losing sensation. A familiar voice called him to wake. Issei stirred and saw Ophis watching him, her balance breaker armor evident, and realized he could not move. He panicked and searched for an explanation. Draig reassured him that he was in the dimensional rift. Issei recalled coming here to chase Shalba and then losing consciousness. Ophis explained calmly that Samael's blood had shattered his body and that for the moment his soul inhabited the armor. Issei grew alarmed at the news and felt sorrow at being unable to reunite properly with his friends. Draig comforted him, stating that as long as he and Ophis remained, Issei's soul would not be drawn to the afterlife nor would he need to inhabit another host. Issei asked what they would do now, since the arrangement could not last forever. Ophis replied that their immediate priority was to find him a new body. Issei expressed a wish to see his companions one more time and say goodbye. Ophis said she would contact someone who could help. A vast presence approached, and a fissure opened to release an enormous red dragon that strode into the rift. Ophis and Drake recognized the arrival. Drake realized and reacted to the appearance of Great Red. Issei shared the stunned reaction. Great Red announced that he had come to see whether Elohim had already reincarnated. Ophis confirmed that Elohim had died but that they had managed to prompt his reincarnation in his final moments. Issei asked if Elohim was the biblical god. Ophis affirmed that it was the same being and that Elohim had indeed died but had been made to reincarnate. Great Red inquired about the reincarnated individual. Ophis revealed that the soul had returned 17 years ago and that Elohim's new identity was now Emilia Yusa, a female incarnation who had matured and grown powerful under Ophis's care. Great Red expressed satisfaction and teased Ophis about having grown attached after initially refusing involvement. Ophis responded with quiet pride in Emilia's progress. Drake asked what had brought Great Red to this place. Great Red replied that he had come for Trihexa's body because he had found its soul wandering but currently dormant, and he observed that Ophis seemed weakened. Ophis began to answer that something had happened, and the scene paused as they prepared to explain further. Issei watched as Ophis recounted to Great Red everything from the founding of the Cows Brigade to the events with Rizavim. Great Red questioned Ophis about how Elohim or Emilia could have allowed her to set those things in motion. Ophis replied that Elohim had known nothing and that she had preferred it that way. Elohim sought a quiet life like hers, and for that reason Ophis had deliberately kept her uninvolved. Great Red said he understood and, shifting the topic, explained that the individual's current state was a consequence of Ophis's actions. As a reward for that person's determination, Great Red intended to fashion a new body for him from a part of his own essence. Issei felt embarrassed and did not know how to respond. Drake encouraged him, telling him to be happy, partner, because now he could return to Rias and the others. A great golden and black light began to glow from within Great Red, alarming everyone and stirring the presence of Trihexa that lay dormant inside him. Trihexa sensed a pull toward that light. Alone in his mental space, Issei wondered where he was and where everyone else had gone. Looking upward, he saw a dragon as vast as Great Red, black with gold accents. The dragon descended and shifted form into a man appearing older than 30, with long blue hair and red eyes marked by 3 blade-like symbols. The man introduced himself as Issei, the eternal king of knowledge, and explained that he was a fragment of his soul left behind to preserve his legacy and to choose a worthy successor. Issei told Issei that he wished to grant him a gift, additional abilities. Issei, surprised and self-conscious about his lack of a body, said he did not feel deserving. Issei observed that the fragment would not have reacted to him otherwise and had seen Issei's determination to protect those around him and his conviction in the face of adversity. Issei believed Issei would judge the power well and offered it on the condition that Issei accept it. Issei admitted that he needed more strength to protect Rias and the others, but in his current state he felt powerless. Issei reassured him not to worry about his body, for he trusted that Great Red would do something about it. Issei accepted the offer with enthusiasm. Issei warned that becoming his heir would draw all manner of beings seeking that power, and that enemies far stronger than those Issei was used to would come. Issei understood and remained determined to accept the responsibility. Issei said he would be comforted to leave his legacy to Issei but began to fade, explaining that his time was ending. He urged Issei to strive to master the power completely so that, once achieved, Issei could forge his own strength. Issei promised to put in the effort. When 19's words finished, the space dissolved and Issei found himself back at the dimensional rift with Ophis and Great Red. Great Red observed that Issei had chosen his heir and asked Trihexa for his opinion. Trihexa laughed mockingly, astonished that the choice had fallen to a youngster. Drake then asked what Great Red meant by saying Issei had been chosen, addressing Issei as his partner. Issei, hearing that he had been chosen, wondered what they meant by that. Issei noted that someone named 19 had apparently entrusted him with their powers, speaking with a nervous laugh. Ophis reacted with surprise, proclaiming that the eternal king of knowledge had appeared. Issei responded with an embarrassed chuckle. Securudii commented that Issei always managed to surprise him, calling him his partner. Great Red then announced that they should begin. Trihexa added that he would add some of his own energy to a part of Issei's body, curious to see how it would turn out and trusting that XIX must have had a reason for choosing him. Great Red asked Ophis to send part of her aura to a specific place so they could start shaping the seal while Issei's soul aligned with 19's mark. Issei watched a symbol with 10 small circles, some containing images of animals, approach his soul. Great Red teased Security to stop sending so much energy into Issei's soul or he would exhaust himself and risk regressing. Security acknowledged this and entrusted his companion to their care. Issei's soul began to fuse with the seal as a new body took shape. Trihexa explained that, with Ophis's memories, they could recreate a body identical to his previous one so he would not feel uncomfortable. Ophis said it was time to unite him with Draig and then with the new body. Trihexa asked Security if he was sure about joining with Issei's soul. Security said he had no objection. He admitted to being a hopeless pervert who had given Issei a ridiculous nickname like the pervert dragon, but insisted Issei was an invaluable companion who had shown him there was more to life than fighting. Great Red pointed out that Security's care for Issei was obvious, otherwise he would not have kept the soul in their world. Security added that he wanted to see how far Issei could go and that life at his side would never be boring. With that, Great Red signaled the start. The boosted gear, with Draig, moved to where Issei's soul waited. Their souls joined together, and the new body wrapped itself in a mantle of energy. Great Red announced that they would now withdraw. He planned to break the seal on Trihexa's body so his soul could return, and then they would leave, promising to return later to check on Issei. He asked Ophis if she would stay. Ophis said she would wait and that Emmy still needed to arrive. Great Red noted the reincarnation of Elohim, and Ophis mentioned that she had asked for Hakuyaku to assist but it likely would not be necessary now. Trihexa urged them to hurry because he wanted to return to his body. Great Red took his leave, and the Great Dragon departed, leaving Ophis watching the mantle of energy that contained the new Security, Hayate Issei. Underworld Gremory Mansion Vala's point of view. Vale watched everyone around him, feeling the heavy sadness that hung over the mansion. Since Hayate Issei had died from Samuel's curse, the entire Gremory group had been devastated. Rias Gremory had locked herself away and refused to see anyone. Baraquiel's daughter seemed scarcely alive, and the others mourned openly. Members of his own group, Kuroka and Leifri, had been affected as well. Vale could not believe Issei had allowed himself to die before they could have their fight. Albion asked Vale what he planned to do next. Vale said there was nothing to do now but wait for the next Security. Albion observed that Vale still looked upset. Vale admitted his frustration stemmed from being unable to face Hayate Issei one last time. Albion asked what they would do next. Vale said he would go to Kyoto to relax and clear his mind, hoping to create a new technique. He needed to grow stronger to defeat Rizavim. Albion warned that, at Vale's current level, it would be unlikely. Vale also intended to look for any sign of Ophis. If she was still alive, she would likely pass through Kyoto, since she frequented it. A voice interrupted, and Azazel appeared. Azazel asked what Vale planned. Vale replied that he only wanted to find strong opponents to train against. And get stronger. He felt there was nothing left for him at the mansion. Azazel acknowledged this but reminded him that the loss of Hayate Issei still troubled him and suggested not wandering too far. Vale said he understood and needed to focus on other things. Azazel offered help if needed. Vale declined further remarks and departed through a transport seal, unable to shake the thought that perhaps he could have done something to save Hayate. Kyoto. While Vale walked through the city searching for signs of Ophis, he noticed he was being watched. He warned whoever was observing that they should reveal themselves or leave. A mysterious voice retorted that his manners left much to be desired. A woman then emerged from the shadows. She resembled the Gremory heiress, with blood-red hair braided at the side and sky-blue eyes, radiating a strong energy. Despite that power, Vale felt a calm presence near her, and he watched as the withered plants around them revived. Vale asked who she was. The woman introduced herself as Emilia Yusa and said she was the first bearer of the Gate Shielder, the Bansurudii. Vale said he had never heard of that sacred gear or that title. Albion, observing, suggested in surprise that she might be Meraxes, the Dragon Emperor of Balance. Valley reacted with disbelief at the idea of a Dragon Emperor. A dragon spoke that there were more besides Albion and the Securidae. Meraxes confirmed that, explaining that to be precise they had been 4 dragons who had earned the title of Dragon Emperors. Another dragon greeted Albion after a long time and noted that he seemed calmer than before. Meraxes replied that she had suggested sealing a soul, and when asked why she explained that the others had followed them across different worlds causing havoc with their fights. Emi observed that the moment was emotional but said they had to hurry because Oka was waiting. Vale refused to go anywhere and said he would rather face Emi and Oka. Albion telepathically told Vale to stay calm. Vale accused Albion of cowardice and proposed a deal. He would go wherever Emi wanted if she could land a single hit, because he wanted to know the power of the Bansuridae. Meraxes telepathically commented that Emi's carrier was impulsive. Emi accepted the challenge cheerfully. Vale suggested they move to a more secluded place so no one would interfere, and Emi agreed. Outside the city, the 2 carriers faced each other on an open field. Vale invited Emi to begin and dared her to try to hit him. Emi noted inwardly that he was underestimating her because she was a woman, but she intended to surprise him. She sent a current of electricity from her fingertips, an attack she called Dragon Lightning. Vale dismissed it as too slow. Meraxes telepathically observed that Albion's opponent should not be underestimated. Emi created a small portal with gates so her lightning would exit from another portal behind Vale, striking him and knocking him down. She thought he did not understand what had happened and hoped he would decide to end the match quickly. Meraxes telepathically remarked that the lesson would teach the young man to learn about his opponent before a battle. Vale demanded to know what had been done. Albion telepathically explained that one of Meraxes' abilities was to create portals and travel through them, that she could shape them as she wished, and that she could also generate powerful shields. Vale admitted he understood now but felt the fight would not end with a single attack. Vale declared that the fight had only just begun and activated his vanishing dragon balance breaker. Emi decided to avoid causing unnecessary destruction and generated a massive shield around them. When Vale questioned her intention, Emi replied that she did not want nearby spirits to notice them and cause more complications. She wanted to finish quickly. From a golden seam at her side she drew a sword she called the Sword of Grazia. She explained that the holy sword had the ability to conceal a specified area so that energies inside would not be perceived. Emi then manifested a blue armor with white accents and winged features, identifying it as her Baransa dragon balance breaker. Vale said he would see what she was made of. Emi wrapped her body in electricity and launched small electric spheres. Vale dodged them easily and closed the distance, striking her and sending her flying. Emi had anticipated this and called to Meraxes. Using Gate again, she prepared a Thunder Dragon halberd and combined it with her sacred energy. She then invoked a Divide technique repeatedly, and Vale, confident that his earlier blow would allow him to use his own ability against her, attempted to counter. Suddenly Vale felt intense pain and his balance breaker vanished. Meraxes telepathically explained that the attack they had split contained an enormous amount of sacred energy, because of Vale's demonic blood, absorbing that energy had inflicted great harm on him. Meraxes added that no human would normally carry such sacred power and that its purity was even greater than that of a seraphim. Vale was stunned, saying he had never felt sacred energy like that before. Emi deactivated her balance breaker and appeared in front of him, giving him a light tap with her fingers and smiling, indicating the fight was over. Vale could not believe he had been subdued so quickly. Despite his defeat, he found himself strangely unbothered. Instead he felt unexpectedly calm and a gentle warmth in her presence, which surprised him. Albion telepathically noted that he had not expected Vale to react that way. Vale denied it hastily and grew flustered. Meraxes reminded him that she could hear his thoughts. Vale fell silent as Emi reached toward him. A white light manifested in Emi's hand and his internal injuries began to heal. Vale compared the effect to the sacred gear ability he had seen elsewhere and wondered who she really was. He asked who she was, bewildered by the unexpected power and the healing that had just occurred. Vale asked whether she was an angel or a god. Emilia answered calmly that she could say she was human. Albion observed that no human should be able to possess such pure sacred energy, perhaps even surpassing that of a seraphim. Another voice told Albion to be patient. His wielder would explain later, and it was true that she bore some dragon traits. Emilia cheerfully told Vale to come with her and promised to explain everything in detail as she turned away. Vale found he could not stop looking at her. Something mysterious about her captured his attention. Emilia, serious now, asked him to stop staring because it made her uncomfortable. Vale flustered and insisted he had not been staring, only lost in thought. Albion teased that his wielder was flustered, and another voice playfully suggested Vale had particular tastes. Vale snapped at Albion and said he did not want to be compared to Hayato. Emilia dismissed the teasing and said she needed Vale to come help the Security. Vale, surprised, repeated that she wanted him to help the Security. Emilia confirmed it. Vale asked if the Security was Hayato Issei, and Emilia replied that she only knew the position, not the name of the current wielder. Okasan had asked her to bring Vale to assist. Vale questioned how that could be possible if the Security had died because of Samael's blood. Emilia explained that, to her knowledge, Okasan and Drake were using their energies to keep the Security's soul anchored within the boosted gear. Vale learned that the Security was still present in the world and that Okasan wanted them to lend their energies while a new body was created. Vale asked who Okasan was. Emilia answered brightly that the name was Ophis, the infinite dragon god. Vale reacted with astonishment. Albion noted that if Emilia had that connection, she must be Ophis's daughter and therefore dragon-blooded. Emilia clarified that Ophis was not her biological mother, but that Ophis's blood ran through her veins and that Ophis had cared for her since she was 5. Vale admitted he was more confused, but he resolved that he would get his answers in time. Albion encouraged Vale to follow and help Drake, reminding him he would not want to lose to his rival. Vale agreed that he wanted a good battle with Hayato Issei and decided to follow. Emilia stored Albion behind a shield and slipped the sacred sword into a yellow portal. Before departing, she told Vale to wait a few minutes while she fetched something, wearing an expression that gave nothing away. Vale protested, and Emilia reassured him she would not be long. She said she wanted to sample some of Kyoto's sweets while she was in the city and then stepped through the portal. The portal closed within seconds, leaving Vale alone and annoyed by her quick departure. Meanwhile in the city, Emilia walked between stalls carrying 2 bags. She spotted a girl with violet eyes and twin tails holding a pink staff, who was excitedly trying to buy something at a vendor's stand. Emilia thought there might be something interesting at the stall and told her companion Marex that she would take a quick look and then they would leave. A vendor refused to give a discount, and the girl pleaded sadly. Emilia approached and offered to pay the girl's share and to buy one for herself. The girl, surprised and grateful, struck an odd pose in thanks. Emilia introduced herself as Emilia Yusa. The girl replied that Emilia was very kind and gave her name as Serafall. Serafall smiled and introduced herself as Shirtorai. Emi returned the greeting and asked if Serafall lived nearby. Serafall explained she was on a short vacation in Kyoto, taking a few days off work. Emi noted that Serafall looked young and said it was her first time in Kyoto and she wanted to try the food. Serafall thanked Emi and offered to show her around the city as a token of gratitude, mentioning she knew the best places to eat from previous visits. Emi politely declined because she had something to do but promised she would accept the offer if they met again. Serafall said she would be in Kyoto for a week and hoped they would meet again. Emi said goodbye and told Serafall to take care. Serafall asked to be called Sera since they were friends now. Emi agreed, and they parted ways. Walking near an empty alley, Emi replayed the encounter in her mind and asked Marex if he had noticed anything unusual. Marex answered that there was no doubt the girl was a demon. She seemed to be wearing a seal to hide her powers. Emi admitted she had barely perceived it and guessed the girl must be strong enough to need such a seal. Marex suggested the demon might be of high or supreme rank. Emi thought the girl had not seemed malicious and urged haste so Vale would not grow impatient. A dimensional breach opened. Meanwhile, Ophis waited for the Red Dragon Emperor to emerge from the mantle that had formed around him. When the process finished, the mantle began to crumble and someone started to step out. Ophis thought aloud that it was about time. The Red Dragon Emperor Issei looked at his new body and noted it felt identical to his previous one, with no noticeable difference. Ophis told him he would understand more as he learned to control his abilities. For a moment Issei had expected to emerge as a dragon, and he admitted relief when that did not happen. Ophis said he would not have minded if that had been the case. Issei made a light-hearted remark about how strange the new body felt. Ophis was unsure what Issei meant, and Issei wondered who was arriving. A dimensional gate opened again. Issei saw a red-haired girl with blue eyes approaching, accompanied by Valley. The girl announced that she had brought the white dragon as requested, then froze in surprise at Issei's appearance. Issei wondered if she had called Ophis mother, and briefly considered whether the girl might be Ophis's child. Merax observed that it was surprising, since he had not expected Ophis to have offspring. Issei also thought aloud that the girl's appearance resembled someone he knew, and he wondered if his new body had changed his reactions. The thought passed quickly. The girl introduced herself as Emilia Yusa, offering a brief personal introduction. Issei returned his own introduction and identified himself as the current Red Dragon Emperor. Emilia had believed Issei's body had been destroyed and that only his soul remained in the world through the intervention of her mother. Ophis began to explain everything that had happened until their arrival, and Issei sensed Draig growing a little nervous. Ophis checked that Draig was all right, and Draig replied hesitantly, greeting his sister through the caller's voice. Both Valley and Issei were surprised by Draig's response. Issei then asked whether the girl was Draig's sister. Issei reacted with surprise. Ophis explained that her name was Merax's and that she was the Dragon Emperor of Balance. Valley could not believe it. He had always thought there were only 2 heavenly emperors. Valley added that he had been just as surprised when Albion told him, and that the woman was a mystery with enormous magical power and a sacred aura that even surpassed that of a seraph. Issei asked whether she might be an angel reincarnated like Irina. Valley doubted it but said she would clarify everything. Yusa, who preferred to be called Emi, noted that she could see she was the topic of conversation. Issei remarked that Yusa must be aware. Emi asked them to drop the honorifics and said they could call her Emi or Big Sister. Issei did not understand, and Valley insisted it was time for her to reveal who she really was. Emi, visibly nervous, agreed. Ophis offered to explain and asked Issei if he remembered what the Great Red had asked earlier. Issei answered that he did, nearly already knowing Emilia's true identity. Valley asked if the Great Red had been there. Ophis confirmed and said he would recount what had happened with the Great Red, but first asked Issei whether he had already formed an idea of who she was. Issei admitted that he had. Valley pressed to know who it was. Meraxes intervened, suggesting that Albion and his brother would be in for a surprise, and both dragons shuddered, already suspecting the truth. Valley demanded that Ophis stop wasting time and say it. Ophis then announced clearly that Emilia Yusa was the reincarnation of Elohim, the biblical god, leaving everyone stunned. Valley repeated in disbelief that she was the biblical god. Draig and Albion fell silent while Meraxes laughed in a mocking tone. Emi explained that in a past life, before she died, she had been helped by Ophis, the Great Red, and Meraxes. Thanks to them, her soul had been joined with Meraxes's. The Great Red had given a portion of himself as well. Ophis summarized that, in short, they were bound for eternity by the sacred gear, which had been created from her energy and the Great Red's. Valley asked whether she had been born human. Emilia replied that when her current body formed about 17 years ago it had been that of a baby and that Oka had taken her to an orphanage where she stayed until she was 5. Afterward Oka had taken her back and cared for her. Ophis added that he had trained her from then on to use her draconic power and some sacred abilities. Emi confirmed that electricity was Meraxes's element and that she had already mastered it, and that she had learned various magics around the world. Oka had disliked staying in one place, and Emi admitted she still had not fully mastered sacred energy. Issei asked excitedly whether she planned to return to heaven, certain that everyone would be glad to have her back and would help with her sacred energy. Emi answered that she had no intention of returning. Issei reminded her that she knew she was the biblical god. Emmy said she had known since she was 10 but had no desire to return to heaven or become their leader. She believed they had moved on and were faring well without her. Issei found her indifference hard to accept, wondering if she really did not care about her faithful or the suffering of her angels upon learning of her death. He thought of how many people had been affected by her disappearance because Michael had been unable to keep the system fully operational. Asia had suffered for trying to help a demon and had been labeled a witch. Zenobia had been nearly broken upon hearing of the death, and Irina, the most devoted to the church's teachings, might have had her life ruined if Michael had not become her guide. She didn't seem to care about any of it. To her, treating other people lightly was acceptable, and he could not tolerate that. Ophis told Ibu to calm down, sensing his anger rising. Ibu accused Emilia angrily that she treated people's beliefs and faith as a simple game. Emilia responded by asking what was wrong with him, calling him security. Ibu shouted that many people had suffered because she assumed everything was fine and demanded that she be more responsible and aware of others. Emilia countered that the people the system could not support had been excluded or labeled heretics, and that she had been aware of that. Ibu asked why she had not gone to heaven to fix things if she could have done something. Emilia answered calmly that she could have tuned the heavenly system to work at full capacity and had begun to remember how it functioned thanks to dreams of a past life, but she saw it as unnecessary. Ibu accused her of indifference to suffering. Emilia challenged him, asking what he would do if that were truly the case. Ibu said he would drag her there by force if necessary and would not allow her to treat Asia, Irina, and Zenobia like a game. He intended to make her go to heaven and apologize to everyone. Emilia invited him to try and see whether his words held any weight. Ophis remarked mischievously that this was getting interesting and would prepare a closed space for them to spar. A large area inside the rift began to glow as Ophis extended a hand. Emilia proposed that, since he had just recovered his body, they should refrain from using their sacred gears. Ibu agreed. Emilia added that, as an extra constraint, she would not use holy energy or magic, relying instead on electric energy channeled through her limbs. Ibu accepted, and Emilia told him they should begin. Before he realized it, Emilia was in front of him and sent him flying with a single kick. When he tried to rise, the place where she had struck felt numb, likely from the charged electricity. Ophis asked Ibu if he was okay. Ibu thought he could not believe he had been hurt so badly by one kick. Ophis reminded him not to underestimate the reincarnation of the biblical God. Ibu admitted that fighting without the balance breaker had perhaps been a bad idea. He was not strong in close quarters and would not be able to hit her at her speed. Ophis said it was not the time to complain and reminded him that he had promised to make her apologize. Ibu declared that it was now his turn. He launched himself at Emilia to strike, but her body shrouded in electricity blocked his blow and struck his abdomen, knocking him back and making him stagger. He refused to give up. Suddenly Ibu felt a surge of heat through his body. This time Emilia seemed slower. He could follow the path of her strike clearly and managed to dodge. He attempted to counter, and when his hand released a burst of flame that struck her, she was forced back, surprising them both. Ibu asked Drake what had happened. Drake explained that, like Emilia used lightning through her body, Ibu could manifest heat and fire from his own being. He only had to feel and visualize the flames flowing through him. With adaptation, it would become natural. Ibu resolved that this would give him a chance. Drake then pointed out that Ibu's eyes had changed and that everyone was watching. Ibu had noticed that he could now clearly see opponents' movements. Drake identified the new visual ability as the Sharingan, the demonic ocular power of the eternal king of knowledge. Drake noted that this would help Ibu anticipate opponents' moves and copy their techniques, though copying magic without the capacity to use it would be meaningless. Ibu asked whether this meant he could use different attacks. Drake clarified that he could imitate magic in form, but only if he had the capacity to actually wield it. Drake then reminded him of his fight against Baal and advised Ibu to imagine Baal's attacks and concentrate on his fighting style. Ibu agreed and prepared to follow Drake's guidance. From Emilia's perspective, she found it striking that in his frustration he had awakened his dragon element. Perhaps this was due to his body being formed from the Great Red and Trihexa, inheriting the Eternal. King's abilities and carrying Okasan's aura. She acknowledged that those new eyes explained how he could dodge her so effectively. Drake added that the Sharingan would allow him to predict movements within his field of vision and adapt his body to their attacks. Emilia agreed that the ability would be useful if he was fast enough to exploit it, and she noted that it would be very difficult for him if they fought seriously. Still, she admitted she had provoked him on purpose to help him get used to his new body. When another voice, Marex, was mentioned, Emilia laughed and said that noticing him did not mean she would let Aiba win. She wondered what kind of older sister would allow that. They continued the sparring, each testing the other's limits in the closed space Ophis had created. The exchange of lightning and flame, combined with quick reflexes and new visual perception, kept the duel intense but contained, more like high-energy anime combat than anything truly harmful. After a bout of clashes and tactics, a brief neutral moment passed as both sides adjusted, readying for the next move. Issei responded cheerfully. He did not notice how Hayadu moved toward him with a kick, but he managed to dodge. Hayadu kept attacking. He seemed to have grown accustomed to fire, unleashing powerful flames from his hands that would have caused trouble if Issei had not avoided them. It also seemed as if Hayadu had suddenly become an expert in close combat. The pattern of his movements had changed. Among the spectators, Valley was astonished and wondered aloud what had happened to Hayu, noting that he fought like a seasoned fighter and even recalling the same presence as Cyrone. Ophis explained that the change came from the Demon Eye ability, which had allowed him to mimic another's movements after a suggestion from Drake. Valley guessed that the Demon Eye must be some kind of ability tied to the so-called Eternal King, and Ophis offered to use the opportunity to explain who that king was and why Great Red had arrived. Ophis then told Valley everything, and Valley remained stunned. Suddenly, something changed. Hayadu froze in place while Emilia walked up to him and struck him without him doing anything. Valley asked whether Hayadu had run out of energy. Ophis observed that Emilia's eyes had shifted from blue to a bright, shining pale color, and identified the effect as the moon illusion, a power that could alter perception and reality through powerful illusions. Valley remembered that the biblical god had used a similar technique against them before they were sealed. Ophis warned that the moon illusion caused great mental strain and, despite Emilia's connection to Great Red, it was not something to be used often. Valley accepted this with concern, feeling the need to surpass them both. Meanwhile, Issei found himself trapped in a loop without realizing it. He wondered what was happening. He could not take his eyes off her, and suddenly she was in front of him. Attacking. A voice told him to calm down, reminding him that it was only an illusion and that he needed to focus and try to break the bond that held him. Issei understood and concentrated. The scene around him began to crack as if it were a mirror. He saw Emilia half kneeling and holding one eye. Emilia noted that he had managed to break the illusion and mentioned that he should be grateful for those eyes, but that this had been a heavy blow to her. Issei replied that he would not give up. Emilia decided it was time to finish the fight and launched an attack. She flew toward Issei and tried to strike, but he leaped and evaded her. Emilia was confident, saying that now he would not be able to escape. He then saw electricity gathering over her body as she shouted the name of her technique, and the thunderous assault hit him. The impact overwhelmed him and he gradually lost consciousness. When Issei woke, Emilia was tending to his wounds. Up close, her healing felt similar to the ability he had seen before, which made sense given that she had created her own sacred gear. Emilia asked if he was all right and whether he felt any lingering pain. Issei answered that he was fine. Emilia then apologized for her earlier behavior, explaining that she had acted that way out of concern and because she did not want people to cling to an image or a person as the sole foundation of their faith. She said that in her old memories that had never been her intention. Issei asked what she meant. Emilia clarified that if a person's faith was genuine, they would not need anything to maintain or transmit it. They should be able to stand on their own. Regarding those labeled as heretics, she believed that if their faith were true, they would rise and move forward regardless. Issei was surprised by her words. He agreed that, despite becoming demons, Asia and Zenobia continued to pray, and that Irina still maintained her beliefs despite everything. Emilia smiled and said it was not necessary for her to intervene, especially now that she had heard they had formed an alliance with demons and fallen angels. Issei apologized for what he had said earlier and for attacking her in the heat of the moment. He knelt and asked for forgiveness. Emilia told him not to worry, saying that it was the role of a sister to teach her younger brother. Issei reacted in surprise, asking whether she really meant that she considered him her brother. Issei did not understand. Emi explained with a smile that both of them shared the body of the Great Red, that their auras and blood were tied to Ophis, and that even their dragons were siblings, which made them practically brothers. Issei admitted that, seen that way, she had a point, although he had a feeling he might regret it later. Emi then said as an apology that she wanted him to call her older sister or Emi, older sister. Issei, embarrassed, agreed to call her Emi, older sister. Issei thought that this must explain why he had not felt attracted to her. Since they shared the same blood, they regarded each other as family. Emi teased that the two of them were perverts, and Issei laughed nervously. Valley snapped at Issei to be quiet and denied ever looking at him in that way. Emi mocked the exchange. When Issei tried to joke about Valley liking his sister, Valley silenced him with a warning that one more word would make him regret coming back. Issei backed down and said he just wanted to return to Rias and the others, and to introduce his older sister to Irina, Asia, and Zenobia. Emi suggested they stay and train their powers a little so Issei would have an idea how to use them before returning. Issei agreed that it would be good to come back and surprise everyone with new abilities. Emi added that Vala probably wanted to learn to control Albion's attribute as well. Vala said he wanted Ophis to bind his soul with Albion's so he could become stronger. Ophis replied that she had no objection and did not think she would find a better vessel than Valley. She also did not want to fall behind Drake. Albion and Ophis exchanged the familiar banter about rivalry, and Emi said she thought that rivalry was healthy. Ophis said she would perform the binding right away and that it would not take long. She then remarked on the oddity that 3 of the 4 heavenly emperors had gathered in this world. Issei and Emi asked what she meant by this world. Ophis explained that there were many worlds, each with a mirror counterpart in which counterparts existed. In one world you might be one thing, and in the mirror you might be the opposite. Ophis added that when Trihexa's body had torn into this world, it had done so violently, rending space itself and causing time to flow differently between this world and its mirror. She did not know the exact difference. Issei reacted with alarm at the idea of multiple versions of himself, and Valley reassured him that he could at most have one counterpart located in the mirror world. Ophis confirmed the complication with Trihexa's intrusion, and then, when Emi asked about the nickname Demon's Eyes for his younger brother Sharingan, Ophis provided historical context. She explained that Issei, the eternal king of knowledge, had possessed the ability to cause pure demons to be born. It had even been Issei who granted 72 pillars the power to become demons after abandoning the heaven of Elohim. Everyone reacted with surprise. Emi, disappointed, mumbled that her younger brother being an incubator of demons was unexpected. Ophis clarified that while the ability existed, creating demons required an immense amount of power. Vala protested that they should start training right away because it was uncomfortable being in the dimensional rift. Ophis said she had nothing else to do and would first work with Vala, then bring Tannen to help manage his attributes. Emi, excited, called to begin. Far below in the dimensional rift, a mysterious voice declared that it finally had the last 4 pieces it needed. It intoned that it was time to rise again and move among the living, and it invoked a forbidden ritual. 4 coffins appeared from nowhere, and 4 silhouettes emerged, each radiating a potent dark energy. The voice said it would soon open a fissure in space so that this world could serve as sustenance for its master. Back in the rift, Emi trained Issei and Valley to control the elemental powers of their dragons. Valley, having just united his soul with Albion at Ophis's suggestion, felt highly motivated to master the wind attribute and become stronger. Ophis left to fetch Tannen to assist with the attribute work, while the others did not yet notice the rising threat in the lower reaches of the rift. Emi advised them to use their mental spaces and let Drake and Albion assist them. Issei asked if Emi would keep helping, and Emmy said she had little left to teach and that being in their individual mental spaces would help more. She also mentioned she had to return home for food and laughed about it. Valle vowed that he would master it and have his rematch, and Emmy said she would see them later. Emmy opened a portal to Norway, where she usually lived, and left. Issei teased Valle about staring at Emmy, asking if he liked her, and Valle told him to be quiet and insisted he was not interested in that sort of thing. Albion teased Valle that dragons tended to seek strong partners, and Valle shouted at Albion to be quiet. The two men then entered their personal spaces so Drake and Albion could help them train. Meanwhile, Emmy finished her shopping and prepared to step away to use her portal, unaware that someone had noticed her and was approaching. She sighed, feeling tired, and thought she hoped this would end soon so she could find a new home. Ophis, speaking in her mind, told Emmy not to worry, the two would adapt quickly. Emmy agreed and admitted she was considering moving closer to her new little brother and that it would also be interesting to be near Drake. Emilia noticed someone approaching and told the group that the aura felt familiar. She was about to comment further when a mysterious voice declared that it had finally found its lightning princess. Thor announced his arrival. Emilia asked what he was doing there. Thor said he had been searching for her since their last battle, that he could not get her out of his mind, and that she had captivated his heart and was worthy to stand by his side. Emilia asked what he meant. Thor explained that he had come to ask for her hand in marriage and take her to Asgard to be his lightning princess, adding that he sensed she was a goddess. Emilia replied angrily that she would never marry someone she did not know and that she had other matters to attend to. Thor urged her to reconsider, insisting that being with the god of thunder should take priority. Emilia said she would not waste any more time and prepared to leave. As Emilia moved to step through the gate, Thor lunged and grabbed her. Together they were pulled through the portal and arrived at a dimensional rift where Issei and Valle were training. Issei asked what had happened and who the newcomer was. Emilia explained that it was Thor, who had stubbornly followed her. Thor asked where they were and addressed Emilia as his future wife. Emilia told him they were at the dimensional rift and asked that he use her name. Issei expressed disbelief that Emilia would be involved with a god. Emilia clarified that they had met some time ago and that, after a battle, Thor had taken the wild idea of wanting to marry her, which she found very annoying. Valle watched the scene with a sudden surge of anger he could not explain. He stepped forward and told the blond man that if he had no business there, he should leave. Thor observed that both the Sekiryutai and the Hakuryuka were present. Emilia offered to open a portal and send him back. Valle declared that he would not leave Emilia's side and demanded respect from mortals. Thor responded that he would remember that, addressing Emilia with a formal title. Emilia insisted on being called by her name, Emilia. At that moment Ophis appeared through a portal with Tannen at her side, joining the group. Some of the others reacted in surprise that the dragon goddess of infinity was present and noted that explained Emilia's power and the unusual weapon she carried. Emilia directed attention to the weapon she had summoned. From her hand emerged a sword unlike typical sacred weapons. Instead of appearing through a small golden portal, it seemed to form from her own body and radiated great pressure. Emilia identified it as the evolutionary sword Better Half, the weapon she had used in a past life as a biblical god, and added that only she could wield it, though she did not yet fully master it. Thor admitted that not even his Mjolnir could rival such a weapon, praising its strength. Others commented on Emilia's power, and one teased that the blonde might be weak, drawing a sharp retort and a challenge from Thor. The conversation turned to more serious matters when Tannen asked about Issei. Tannen noted that the Gremmeries were worried, and Issei said he would visit them after he adapted to his new body and grew stronger. He wanted to gain the power to protect them. The others acknowledged his devotion and urged him to work on his sacred powers. Ophis suggested a training exercise so everyone would become accustomed to dragon power. She told Valle and Issei to attack her with all they had and display their strength. Issei called upon Albion and Valle summoned his dragon power. Both launched an assault. Issei channeled flames through his arms and legs with impressive control, while Valle shaped powerful gusts of wind and even mastered a roaring dragon technique. Their attack struck in a dramatic anime-style clash against Tannen, who met them with fierce, non-graphic energy. After a day of training in the space created by Ophis, the group settled. Thor again pressed Emilia to accept his proposal to go to Asgard. Emilia reiterated that she had no interest and offered to open a portal to send him away if he insisted. Thor refused to leave without her. The others watched the exchange, amused by how popular Emilia remained. Ophis grew quiet, sensing something. Issei asked if she was all right. Ophis reported that she had felt a strange energy for a moment, but it had already faded. Hayadu asked what they were talking about, and someone called to their older sister. Ophis reassured herself that it must have been her imagination, but she did not finish her thought when everyone suddenly felt a tremendous pressure coming from somewhere in the dimensional breach. Albion observed that he had never felt such pressure in all his years, not even during his fight with Surtur. Albion asked if anyone knew what it was. Drake said he had a faint suspicion and warned that if his suspicion was correct, they should prepare. Meraxes urged Ophis to explain, since Albion and Drake would not explain it properly. Ophis agreed and said that, to begin with, it was likely one of Hidiak's minions. Ophis identified the creature as the dark being who had once fought the Eternal Kings. Someone else asked if it had been defeated. Ophis explained that while the being had been defeated, it remained trapped in another dimension trying to regain strength. Anyone who followed it became its servant, gaining power but also being consumed by pure malice. Valis said that if one of those minions was what they felt, they would just have to defeat it. Ophis interrupted, saying that what they felt was something beginning to tear the fabric of this dimension's space. Tannen asked why it would tear space. Ophis explained that the minion was opening a hole so a fragment of Hidiak could pass through and feed on all life in this dimension. If even a part of Hidiak got through, everything would die and be consumed. They resolved to warn the other leaders and stop it before that happened. One of them said they would inform his father and asked Emmy to open a portal to Asgard. Emmy moved to comply, but Oka cautioned Emmy not to do so. Oka explained that opening a portal would alert the enemy. The minion must be creating a pocket to anchor itself in the breach while it opens the portal. If they summoned reinforcements now, the minion would likely raise a shield and delay them. Oka suggested they use a small space he had created for training to approach unseen and finish the enemy quickly, before it could erect a barrier. Vala declared he would not let Rias and the others disappear and refused to stand idle. Hayadu insisted they would show their new abilities. Another spoke of demonstrating strength to Emmy. One of the Dragon Kings said they would show the invaders that coming here had been a mistake. Oka announced he would move the little training space toward the location where the pressure had been felt. Emmy said she would fetch someone who could surely help. Oka warned that they could not bring in another powerful person, or the minion would notice, but Emmy reassured him that she had a sealing charm to hide the newcomer's powers and there would be no problem. Oka told her to hurry, and Emmy used Gate to return to Kyoto. Emmy searched for the person she had met while looking for Valet and eventually found her leaving a nearby hotel. Emmy asked Serafall to come with her. Serafall was confused at first but agreed when Emmy explained the urgency and that she knew Serafall was a strong demon whose help was needed. Serafall recognized Emmy's concern and followed her through the gate. They arrived through the portal, surprising several people who did not expect the Mao to be with Emmy. Leviathan also appeared and explained that she had come at the request of her new acquaintance, Emmy. Tannen noted the coincidence and recognized Emmy's presence with the Mao. Serafall and Emmy stood together, ready to join the others as they prepared to confront the threat. Serafall's words trailed off when she noticed Hayate Issei standing there. From what she had heard from her sister, he had been struck down by Samuel's power and his death had left the entire Gremry group distraught. Serafall reacted with joy at seeing him alive. She ran to Issei and embraced him, leaving him speechless from the sudden reunion. Issei felt unexpectedly relieved by the reunion. The spirit inside him, Drake, telepathically noted that being close to the Mao made him unusually enthusiastic, and Issei acknowledged that he missed the warmth of the moment. Ophis moved the spatial field that surrounded them toward the source of the pressure they had felt. Emilia took the opportunity to free herself from Thor's grip and briefed Serafall on the situation and on who she truly was. Emilia revealed that, although she was a demon and one of the Maos of the underworld, she did not feel malice and considered Serafall a friend, She insisted on telling her everything. Serafall expressed surprise that Emilia would be involved with Thor, and Emilia dismissed the idea of marriage, explaining that he had been reckless and had once proposed marriage in a fit of obsession, which she had never taken seriously. Serafall teased Emilia about her popularity among men, and Emilia smiled at the remark. Merrick's advised Serafall not to dwell on those comments, and Serafall assured Emilia that she felt Emilia wanted to confide more. Emilia began to explain the threat they faced: the Eternal Kings, Hidiak the Dark, and forces spanning multiple universes. Serafall listened in growing astonishment as Emilia explained that Sekirai Hyde Issei had become the heir to one of those Eternal Kings, the very being who had granted power to the 72 pillars of the underworld and transformed them into demons. If Issei were to master that power, he might be capable of creating pure-blood demons, a development that would revolutionize the demon world. Emilia warned that the council would likely try to keep Issei in the underworld by binding him to a house under their control, arranging a marriage to place him under their influence and away from the House Gremry. That would allow them to control him without interference from the Maus. What surprised Serafall most, however, was Emilia's next confession. Emilia revealed that she was the reincarnation of a powerful celestial leader. Serafall found it hard to believe that she stood before someone with such a past, but Emilia made it clear that, despite her origin, she had no intention of reclaiming that former role. They were separate people now, and Emilia wished only to live in peace while helping those in need. Serafall admitted that she had no words for the revelation and, as the Mao Leviathan, she confessed that she had been both surprised and reassured by Emilia's character. Emilia insisted that she only wanted a peaceful life but would never ignore injustice when she could act. As Emilia spoke, Serafall felt a twinge of envy. Although Serafall understood her own importance and had the freedom to act, her title had come at a cost. She had accepted the mantle of Mao Leviathan after defeating the previous direct descendant of the old Leviathan during the Civil War. She could have refused the title, but she had chosen it for a reason. The current underworld treated women as political bargaining chips or objects of exchange. As Mao, Serafall had vowed to change how women were viewed and to dismantle the system that reduced them to pawns. She had worked tirelessly, and over years of effort she had begun to see gradual progress. One of her allies had developed the evil peace system, which allowed young demonesses to challenge their suitors in a raiding game with their freedom as the prize. It was a modest difference, but it was a step toward the change she had always fought for. The cost, however, had been personal. Accepting the position of Mao Leviathan meant giving up the possibility of romance and a conventional family. Her duty was to protect the underworld at all costs, even if it demanded the ultimate sacrifice. She accepted that burden willingly because when her younger sister Sona was born, Serafall had found new purpose. Sona Citri, destined to inherit the Citri clan, became the reason Serafall chose to remain out in the dark for the sake of another's future. Serafall treasured her sister and would protect her above all else. The chance that Serafall might one day marry and build the family she longed for grew dimmer with each passing year. She had only a few days of vacation each year, and she always spent those rare moments in the human world, the place she chose to refresh herself regardless of how little time she had. Emilia finished her report about the threats and the political stakes. Serafall felt both the weight of her responsibilities and a renewed determination to protect those she cared about. The human world had millions of places, but Serafall always chose one in particular: Kyoto, a city in Japan. The joy and serenity of those streets had stolen the heart of the young demon lord, and whenever she had free time she went there just to walk the avenues and eat the street food. It was not only Kyoto itself. There was a hidden reason why she went there. Only in that city could she feel like an ordinary woman. There was no Citri clan, no one called her Mao-sama, and there was no feigned respect. In Kyoto she was simply Serafall. When Emi spoke, Serafall felt a touch of envy, but she did not regret meeting her and did not care if Emi were the biblical god. She would remain her friend because Emi treated her like anyone else. Emi asked if Serafall was all right. Serafall replied that she had simply been lost in thought, that there was a lot of information to process, but she assured her friend that she was fine. Emi hoped she was not being a bother. Serafall said not to worry, that Emi was her friend and that the matter at hand concerned not only the welfare of the underworld but the whole world, and she would not stand idly by. Emi was surprised by the shift in Serafall's demeanor, from cheerful to serious and resolute. Emi observed that Dragon would be Serafall's brother, which made Serafall happy. Serafall said she was glad, even though she had Oka, she had always wanted a larger family. Emi said she was happy for Serafall and that having a little sister was the best thing. Serafall mentioned So as the cutest little one in the world and explained that So was one reason she had kept the position of Demon Lord. Emi affirmed that she had not been mistaken. Serafall was a great person or demon, as the case may be. Serafall thanked her and said Dragon was fortunate to have Emi as a sister. Despite being a pervert, Dragon was admirable, willing to break rules for the person he loved. Serafall said she was surprised by him and would have liked someone like that when she was younger. Emi reacted with surprise at the idea of Serafall being young. Serafall clarified that appearances were deceptive and that she was older than she looked, coyly noting she was over 100 years old. Emi joked about the advantages of being a demon and, noticing the way Serafall spoke about Dragon, wondered if Serafall felt more than admiration. Serafall denied romantic interest and said she admired Dragon for his willingness to protect what mattered without worrying about status. Meraxes communicated privately to Serafall, asking if she was imagining things. Serafall did not detect any attraction coming from either of them. Meraxes explained that nothing detectable suggested romance, but cautioned that one never knew. Meraxes had no objection to Serafall or anyone from the Gremory group, but would prefer Dragon to pair with an angel. With a recent blessing, angels could form relationships without falling, as long as true love was present. Serafall said she was not attracted to anyone at the moment and supported love in principle. She wanted her brother to be with one of her angels, preferably Gabriel, whom she remembered as the most beautiful angel she had made. Emi reacted strongly. She could not accept Gabriel and said she would support Rias and the others if necessary. Serafall asked if Emi had a problem with Gabriel. Emi replied that Gabriel was her sworn rival. Serafall reflected that Gabriel had not seemed competitive in her memories. Emi warned not to be deceived by an innocent face. Gabriel could be quite dangerous. Serafall wondered whether that rivalry was real or simply something only she perceived. Ophis announced that they would soon enter the enemy space. Everyone prepared, and quickly as they stepped in, a kind of barrier formed around them, trapping them. Emi tried to use her gate, but it was useless. Meraxes reported that the space felt like a labyrinth where gate powers were ineffective. The only way out would be to defeat the creator of the space. They descended and found a flat plain. In the distance, Tanin spotted a fortress that was likely the source of the distortion. Then, from the earth, large undead soldiers and two skeletal dragon-like constructs rose and advanced in formation. The scene felt like an eerie army emerging from the ground, but it had the dramatic, stylized energy of an anime battle rather than anything gruesome. A voice echoed from everywhere, announcing their discovery and noting the presence of the dragon goddess of infinity from this universe. Vala declared, angrily, that as the son of Odin he would punish anyone who threatened their world. Meraxes told Vala to remain calm and demanded to know who dared enter and how they had the audacity. A figure named Gregor introduced himself as a servant of Hidiak, the Dark Lord of Destruction, and warned that their universe would serve as food for his master. Vala told Gregor to stop speaking in riddles and to come face them instead of sending minions. Meraxes remained focused. Oka was working to locate the enemy directly. They suspected a necromancer responsible for the space's creation, someone unlikely to fight them personally. Meraxes advised Dragon to be ready. Dragon affirmed that he was prepared for anything and would not let the enemy do as they pleased. Serafall, hesitant for a moment, braced herself for the confrontation. Serafall stood in the highest tower of the old fortress, watching as the tide of undead refused to let them pass. Vala urged Albion to press forward and finish them off. The others encouraged Vala to show their strength. Vala launched himself into the fray, scattering the undead with bursts of force, but more kept emerging no matter how many he dispatched. His partner answered the call, and Drake agreed. Leviathan declared she would not hang back and would demonstrate the power of Mjolnir. Those three threw themselves into the fight without hesitation, which Serafall found irritating. She reassured Tannen that they were handling things and admitted surprise that the dragon could wield fire. They noted that with his new body he could do even more, and Tannen worried that when the council elders learned of his power they would try to control him. Serafall's expression hardened for a moment. Tannen understood why but chose to focus on the task at hand. Seeing how strong the defenders were, the commander ordered Stain and Phalia to finish them. Stain and Phalia descended two figures whose presence radiated power. Stain acknowledged the order and charged Issei, who barely managed to block. Stain introduced himself and declared that the place would be Issei's tomb. Issei retorted that Stain would be the one to fall and activated his Welsh dragon balance breaker, calling on Draig as his power surged. Issei wrapped his fists in flame and struck at Stain with a flurry of blows. Phalia moved to flank him, but Emmy intercepted with a blade of lightning she drew from nowhere. Stain commented on the solid block and noted the girl's courage. Emmy answered that she would not let Phalia interfere in her brother's fight. From a portal, someone produced a blue spear and tossed it to Serafall. Serafall asked what the spear was. Emmy explained that it was called Lavius, a sacred spear capable of producing ice. Emmy added that the weapon was not bound to the system and had been blessed so Serafall could wield it without wasting magic. Serafall, surprised to be offered such a weapon as a demon, accepted and planned to make use of it. Phalia mocked Emmy's confidence and told her to mind her own business. She fired a beam from her hand that struck Emmy to the ground, but Emmy activated her dragon balance breaker and rose again. A voice reminded Emmy that the lightning blade was called Rakuyo and warned it would be the weapon to fell her. Orders came down. Emmy and Hyde Issei were to handle those two. Vale, Tannen and Lord Leviathan would deal with the remaining undead while the Speaker and the God of Thunder moved toward the fortress. Serafall asked to be called by her name and volunteered to open a path. With Lavias she extended a bridge of ice through the mass of undead, clearing a route for the others. The God of Thunder acknowledged the command and moved forward. The rest of the team continued to fight the undead, and Emmy and Issei struggled against Stain and Phalia. Two enemies slipped away, and they were not easy to bring down. The opposing commanders decided to employ the curse seal. Black marks spread from their necks over their bodies and their strength swelled noticeably. The others recognized the mark as the curse seal, a sign of those who served the dark. It granted power but threatened corruption and madness if not controlled. One of the opponents demonstrated that she could mold her energy into weapons and shapes at will. Stain formed blades of energy and launched a barrage at Issei. Issei dodged the slashes only to find Stain suddenly behind him with a swift, precise move. The blow struck him hard and knocked his helmet away, sending him to the ground. Stain moved with blinding speed, keeping Issei off balance. Emmy, still engaged with Phalia, called for Issei to be careful. Phalia told Emmy to focus on herself instead. Emmy gathered electricity in her hand and unleashed a lightning strike at Phalia, but Phalia grabbed her arm and dissipated the energy. Phalia explained that her right arm could nullify magic and energy, rendering Emmy's attacks ineffective. Emmy tried to free herself and used Rakuyo, but Phalia countered with a powerful blast that sent Emmy tumbling. Phalia pressed the advantage, urging to finish off their prey and wipe out the remnants fighting with the undead. Issei answered with a fire dragon roar, but the attack was evaded. He pushed onward, channeling more power. A storm of electricity descended toward Phalia. She used her nullifying arm to cancel it, not noticing that the assault had masked another strike that hit her from a different angle. The attackers realized she could only negate one attack at a time. Emmy formed her hand into the shape of a pistol and fired a concentrated sacred beam while sending another surge of lightning, but Phalia managed to evade both. Emmy stayed defiant, refusing to be pinned down. From the edge of the field, Serafall watched the skirmish with growing concern. She worried that Issei, in his current condition, might not be able to withstand Stain and felt the need to hurry. Vale and Tannen were tied up with the endless stream of undead, and she hoped the others had reached the fortress as planned. In a quieter moment, holding the spear she had been given, Serafall found the weapon remarkably useful and resolved to ask Emmy if she could keep it. They were almost at their destination, but Leviathan felt a bad premonition. One of the allies urged them to finish quickly and end this, and Leviathan told the others to move on while he would take care of the threat. Another ally entrusted the task to Leviathan. Leviathan noted it had been a long time since a serious fight. When the others moved away, Leviathan pressed a hand to the ground and unleashed power, sending a colossal wave of ice sweeping across the battlefield. The ice covered and froze the stone giants, shattering them into pieces, but Leviathan watched as they reassembled. Leviathan guessed they must have some sort of core that allowed them to regenerate. A woman stepped forward and identified herself as Les, claiming responsibility for the creatures and boasting that her unlimited energy kept them from being defeated. She explained that if she were defeated, none of the constructs would be able to regenerate, and she threatened Leviathan as one of the 4 mouths of the underworld. Leviathan prepared to fight. Marks spread across Les's body and her strength rose dramatically. Les rushed Leviathan from behind, but Leviathan's ice defenses held. An attack called Levia struck, but it dispersed into mist, and the giants advanced. Leviathan then activated a technique called Celsius Cross Trigger and froze the surrounding terrain, encasing the giants and Les in magical ice. Les tried to dispel the ice with her energy, but Leviathan recognized that this was no ordinary ice. It had been reinforced by magic and would not yield easily. Realizing it was time to finish the confrontation, Leviathan used a spear of ice to drive multiple frozen pillars that immobilized Les and sealed her power, neutralizing her threat. With Les contained, the stone giants collapsed and could no longer regenerate. Satisfied the area was secure, Leviathan set off to catch up with Ophis. Elsewhere, Ophis and Thor had penetrated the fortress and faced Gregor. Thor charged the hammer Mjolnir and hurled it, but Gregor repelled the blow and a dark mark spread over his body, amplifying his power. Ophis warned Thor that the mark was a curse that increased Gregor's abilities and urged caution. Gregor declared that, thanks to the energy he had gathered, he had enough power to tear open space itself and create a rift. He admitted his first attempt had failed for lack of power, but the recent confrontation had allowed him to accumulate the necessary energy and direct it to a fissure above. Ophis and Thor stepped outside and saw a massive rift forming and gathering force, close to opening. Ophis offered to try to hold the rift while Thor dealt with Gregor. Gregor taunted them, claiming their presence had only accelerated his plan and that powerful beings like them had helped the process. He boasted about turning the world into fuel for the Great Dark. Thor countered and struck Gregor repeatedly with Mjolnir, forcing him back, while Ophis rose beside the rift and focused on using her power to slow the incoming energy and begin closing it. Gregor warned that he had prepared something just in case, and Thor asked what he meant. A voice demanded a response. The summoner explained that before creating this space he had investigated the underworld and obtained valuable samples to serve as his new servants. Another voice declared that the summoner would not be given time to carry out his plans. The summoner answered that they could try and invoked his reanimation technique. 4 coffins emerged from the floor and 4 figures stepped out. The summoner ordered Asmodeus, Beelzebub, Leviathan, and Lucifer to go and finish the intruders. The 4 refused and announced that they did not obey anyone, that they were the great demon lords of the underworld. Beelzebub made his presence known, a large man with dark chestnut hair and a cold gaze. Leviathan spoke next, a beautiful woman with muted green hair and black glasses, noting the risk Ouroboros Ophis was taking trying to save this world. Asmodeus complained about the situation with a gruff voice. He was a heavily muscled man with long black hair and resented that brats had been placed in their position. Lucifer, a silver-haired man who radiated an air of elegance, warned that he could sense a demon approaching and that they could not move freely. The summoner explained that his technique was the cause, but promised that if they fought for their lord with everything they had, he would restore them to life, grant them greater power than ever, and allow them to create a stronger new underworld. The demon lords agreed that the current state of the underworld allying with angels and the fallen was a disgrace and that their enemies deserved to disappear. They resolved to create demons stronger than any opposition. One of them confirmed that the summoner had done what they asked, and the summoner replied that he had found the target as instructed and applied the procedure to their bodies, so they were free to fight. A voice among them remarked that the son of Odin would make the perfect test subject for their experiment. Meanwhile, in the fight between Issei and Emilia, Stein mocked the younger combatant, asking if that was all he had. Drake warned that if they continued as they were, Issei would be killed. Ibo urged everyone to stay calm and not lose composure. Issei's power surged again and again as he pushed himself forward. He lunged at Stein, who dodged easily and answered with spears formed from his energy. Issei recognized that despite repeated boosts and using his Sharingan to read movements, his body did not respond quickly enough. Drake warned that persisting like this would end them. Issei considered forcing the power of XIX, but Drake cautioned that his body would not withstand it in its current condition, still adapting to being made of multiple races with no balance yet. Issei insisted that he could manage it and that he had a plan. Drake, though reluctant, agreed to support him, calling him reckless but willing to follow. As Stein grew impatient and prepared to finish the fight, Issei shifted his focus. He channeled his enhancements into his legs to increase his speed and in a blink reappeared directly before Stein. He struck with his right arm. Instead of fire, the attack manifested as a black and gold energy similar to Rias's destruction energy. It swept through Stein in a powerful, decisive surge and left no trace. Issei collapsed to the ground as his balance breaker released. Drake acknowledged that they had succeeded. Drake warned Issei to look at his arm. When Issei looked, he saw that his arm was badly broken and reddened as if burned. Issei said that he could not move it and felt intense pain. Drake reminded him that his body still could not withstand that power. Issei insisted that he had to help his sister Emi. Drake reassured him that Emi would not fall so easily and that, as the biblical deity she represented, she would prevail. Merix noted that Issei had succeeded and reported that Valle and Tannen were finishing off the remaining troops, which were no longer regenerating. Another voice swore that they would go all out. Phalia threatened the girl, vowing to show her true hell. Emi brought her hands together and released a vast sacred energy called Holy Ray. The energy split into multiple strikes and rushed toward Phalia, who could not cancel them all and took several hits. Emi then flew forward and attacked with a heavy, axe-like strike. Phalia blocked it, then conjured a spear from a golden portal and followed with a powerful wind attack. Phalia recovered quickly and launched a spear of energy, but she activated a protective shield and reminded everyone that, although she could not use her gate, she still had another ability to defend herself. She called Emi a nuisance. Emi prepared to end the fight, saying she would send Phalia to rest and pray for her soul, but Phalia dismissed the words as nonsense. Emi hurled the spear. Phalia dodged, but she saw Emi begin producing more weapons from golden portals and hurling them in an endless barrage. Phalia asked how Emi could have so many weapons, but Emi warned her not to be distracted. Without warning, Emi appeared before Phalia and struck with paired black and white daggers, crippling Phalia's arm. Phalia spat curses and declared that everyone would die. Emi replied that Phalia would be the one to disappear and that she would pay for her sins. Merix urged Emi to show the power of her technique. Emi concentrated, gathered her hands as if to fire, and produced 3 spheres of sacred energy. She unleashed them in a focused blast called the Yuggoth Cannon, which overwhelmed Phalia and dispelled her presence in a brilliant flash. Emi expressed a hope that Phalia's soul would find rest. Drake teased about praying for a soul, and Merix laughed, while Emi told them not to confuse things and said she needed to go help her brother because his arm was in very bad condition. Emi activated her balance breaker and hurried to Issei's side while Valle and Tannen finished off the remaining undead. Emi told Issei to stretch out his arm. Issei complied, and Emi placed her hand over his injury and began to heal it. Drake observed that Issei had pushed himself too far. His arm had been completely broken and looked burned. Issei acknowledged Drake's warning that his body could not yet withstand 19's power. Drake said Issei would have time to master it and that Emi was almost finished healing him. Hayadu, watching the healing, thought it resembled Asia's healing but noticed Emi worked faster and restored Issei's energy as she healed. Emi remarked that Asia's sacred gear was similar and explained that many sacred gears had been created from her abilities. Valle commented that Hayadu had been troubled by an opponent earlier. Hayadu waved off concerns and noted that Vale looked exhausted. Tanin offered 3 phoenix tears he had obtained earlier to help them recover. Vale suggested saving the last one just in case, and everyone accepted the items. Albion scolded Vale silently for making a joke. A loud explosion suddenly came from the fortress. Tanin urged everyone to hurry to Ophis. They rushed toward the fortress, and when Serafall entered she saw the thunder god lying on the ground, badly injured. At that moment, other figures made their presence known. The original demon lords had appeared. Their appearance unsettled Serafall, who did not recognize them well but felt the weight of their power. One of the demon lords remarked that a young woman had taken his place and mocked a loss to her. Asmodeus suggested he could have some fun with her, but another voice, the stern Lucifer, interjected that Serafall represented the underworld's decline and needed to be eliminated. Serafall realized, with rising alarm, that these were the original demon lords. Facing even one of them would be dangerous, and against all 4 she had almost no chance. Serafall declared that she would not allow them to undo the fragile peace the current demon lord had established with the other factions. She moved to confront them, but then she saw Gregor heading skyward and spotted a tired Ophis struggling to close a widening rift with her dwindling energy. Understanding the urgency, Serafall rushed to defend Ophis, but Leviathan stepped in front of her and taunted her for hurrying. Serafall pleaded that it was not only demons who would die if the rift widened, but Leviathan dismissed the plea, claiming that demons were decadent and deserved to be purged so the demon lords could create others in their stead. Serafall countered that such thinking had prevented demons from advancing in the past, and Asmodeus sneered at her as naive. 2 tentacle-like appendages shot from Leviathan's back to strike, and Serafall evaded them, unaware that Beelzebub had moved behind her. Beelzebub said it was a waste. He might have enjoyed toying with her, but he would not allow interference and struck Serafall with a charged blow that sent her flying into Asmodeus's waiting chains of energy. Lucifer drew a sphere of purple energy and prepared to launch it, declaring that it was time for Serafall to disappear. Serafall braced for the impact, certain the attack would cause severe damage and noting that she could not break the energy chains. At the moment the blast would have struck, someone stepped between her and the attack and blocked it. When the smoke cleared, Issei stood there in his armor, having intercepted the energy. Serafall asked what he was doing as the battlefield tensed for the next move. Serafall told Issei that he should have gone to help Ophis. Issei apologized to Lady Serafall and explained that he could not stand idly by and watch a girl be struck. He had to protect her. Serafall dismissed his worry, insisting that even as a demon king she had not been in mortal danger from the attack. Issei was surprised by Serafall's sudden change in demeanor. She no longer behaved with her usual childish manner. He admitted that, demon king or not, she was still a woman and he wanted to protect her with all his strength. Serafall was left speechless. No one had ever addressed her like that before. Everyone had always treated her as the great demon king Leviathan or, before that, as the heir Citri, and being seen simply as a woman made her blush. Issei reflected that this explained why Rias and the others cared so much about him. He watched as Serafall shifted back to her usual self, and he wondered what had caused the brief change. Emmy arrived with the others, drew a sacred sword, and sliced through Asmodeus's chains with ease before sheathing the blade once more. The original demon kings looked on in astonishment. Serafall thanked Emmy but began to say they needed to help Ophis. Before she could finish, Tanin stepped in and blocked Gregor's strike, preparing to engage him to protect Ophis. Tanin reprimanded Issei for acting rashly and warned that if he had not already used his shielder, he would have been hurt. Issei repeated that he could not watch Serafall be struck. Tanin suggested that he could have used shielder on Serafall to protect her. Issei admitted he had not thought of that. Tanin chided him for being careless. Emmy studied the 4 figures and recognized them immediately from memories of her past life. They were the original demon kings, somehow revived. Serafall's revelation left Issei and Vale stunned, especially Vale, who now stood face to face with his great-grandfather. Meanwhile, Tanin and Gregor clashed in a fast-paced, anime-style duel, exchanging powerful strikes and parries without any graphic harm. Issei called for everyone to hold the attackers back until Oka could close the rift. Serafall told Emmy to let her handle her predecessor. Vala volunteered to go after Lucifer. Vala was about to finish the confrontation when Issei intervened. Issei asked Vala to wait and offered to face Lucifer so Vala would not be hampered by anger. Vala's brother agreed with Issei. Vala consented but warned Hayudu not to die, reminding him that they would still have to face each other later. Hayudu assured him not to worry. Serafall observed the two dragons getting along despite being rivals and thought they seemed like good friends. Asmodeus complained loudly, berating the youngsters for ignoring them. Beelzebub urged calm and told Asmodeus to look carefully at the two young men and sense their auras. Asmodeus expressed surprise at seeing them again and recalled that the celestial dragons had been sealed by Elohim and that these youths now bore their power. Beelzebub noted that Lucifer's blood seemed to run in one of the bearers. Beelzebub remarked that his own lineage had mixed with humans. Asmodeus called that a disgrace to his line, and the descendant of that blood declared he had no relation to Asmodeus's lineage and did not care about any shared blood. Asmodeus called his very existence an abomination that must disappear at his hands. Lucifer prepared to attack, but Issei stepped forward in armor and volunteered to be Lucifer's opponent. Issei told Securudii to stand aside and then launched a dragon shot. Lucifer dodged the initial strike, but Issei closed the distance and sent Lucifer flying with a counterattack. Lucifer cursed, and an exchange began. Leviathan prepared to challenge Serafall, but Serafall unleashed a massive wave of ice to push Leviathan back. Serafall could not allow Leviathan to continue talking about her sister, and Leviathan admitted that the attack had been strong. Asmodeus decided he would have to settle for fighting someone else for the moment and vowed to erase the descendant of Lucifer from the battlefield. Vala and Asmodeus clashed, their balance breakers colliding while they sparred in the air and drifted apart. Vala taunted Issei's opponent, and Asmodeus answered that he would fight with everything from the start. Vala prepared his own balance breaker and the two engaged fiercely. Emmy gathered her power and summoned 7 sacred spheres that shot toward Beelzebub. Beelzebub tried to shield himself but still took damage. Beelzebub recognized the energy as holy and, surprised by its intensity, asked who she was. Emmy revealed that she was the bearer of the Emperor Dragon of Balance, the Banserudai. Beelzebub scoffed at another celestial dragon and declared that he would demonstrate the power of a true demon. Emmy steeled herself and accepted the challenge. In the duel between Issei and Lucifer, the difference in power became apparent. Despite numerous power-ups, Issei could not land effective strikes. Lucifer easily countered or shrugged off Issei's repeated fire attacks. Issei and his dragon Drake discussed their options. Drake warned that Lucifer was not like the previous opponent and that Issei risked injury if he acted carelessly. Issei considered different strategies and proposed concentrating their boosts into his right arm. Drake agreed that if he focused he could do it, and Issei promised that he would reveal his plan soon. Issei repeatedly poured boosts into his arm, drawing power steadily. Lucifer launched a massive orb at high speed. Issei prepared to intercept, but Lucifer's strike passed through him and transformed into chains of fire that wrapped around and immobilized him. Lucifer was baffled. Issei revealed that he had been watching Lucifer's moves closely and had adapted to his rhythm. He explained that he had copied a clone technique and, upon impact, turned those clones into bindings, a modification of the tactic that immobilized Lucifer. Issei had Drake channel all of their accumulated boosts into that fire clone, so Lucifer would not break free easily. Lucifer demanded to know how long that would hold, and Issei answered that it would last long enough. Issei then unleashed Gurren Bequenjin, a sequence of devastating strikes that culminated in a torrent of flaming energy shaped like a sword spiraling into Lucifer. Each strike detonated on contact, forcing Lucifer back and scorching him. Issei acknowledged afterward that he had used up nearly all his strength. Through the smoke, Issei glimpsed Lucifer, his body heavily damaged but regenerating rapidly. Lucifer laughed and explained that he was already dead and that his current form was only a vessel to keep his soul in this world. To truly defeat him, one would have to destroy the body completely or strike his soul. Issei felt drained but determined. Lucifer announced that he would now show a power beyond what Issei could imagine. Meanwhile, the ground where Serafall and Leviathan fought transformed into a frozen tundra. Leviathan teased Serafall, criticizing her serious demeanor and probing about her family. Before Leviathan could finish, Serafall struck with a torrent of ice that covered the area, silencing the taunt about her sister. Serafall warned Leviathan not to mention her sister again. Leviathan admitted that while the attack would have caused severe harm to a weaker body, she was not easily defeated. Serafall vowed to freeze Leviathan for eternity if necessary. Leviathan countered that Serafall's ice was not cold enough to reach absolute zero and announced she would reveal a level of cold and a power she had never shown anyone before. Serafall refused to yield, and the two prepared for the next exchange. Back in the clash between Valle and Asmodeus, Valle used his divide ability to try to reduce Asmodeus's power, but the effect was limited. The fight continued, and the confrontation spread across the battlefield as tension rose between the combatants. All he could do was focus on the target. Albion told Valle to stay calm and not be hasty, explaining that he had fought that opponent before and knew he would be troublesome. Albion pointed out the two spheres orbiting the enemy and explained that the enemy drew magic from them, which was why Valle's divide had failed despite landing so many blows. Valle asked Albion what he suggested. Albion replied that, although the enemy's attacks were powerful, his lateral defenses were weak. The spheres supplied much of his magic, but he grew overconfident and neglected those flanks. Valle decided to strike where the foe was most vulnerable. The enemy taunted that if Valle would not attack, he would, and Asmodeus unleashed a barrage of shimmering orbs and streaks of energy. Valle activated half-dimension and warped space to intercept and deflect the onslaught in a swift, anime-style maneuver. Asmodeus then declared that Valle's white dragon radiance would not be effective. Albion noted that the same tactic had failed in his previous attempts. Valle reacted with surprise. Asmodeus realized that the shields at his sides had been weakened. He watched Valle dodge every attack because Valle used his divide to split and redirect assaults, then rely on pure speed. Valle moved to Asmodeus's flank and struck with full force using the Sky Dragon Roar. The wind impact slammed Asmodeus into the ground, but he rose as if nothing had happened. Asmodeus told the White Dragon that it was time to show the terror of a true pure demon. Meanwhile, Emmy continued fighting Beelzebub. Her sacred attacks gave her a clear advantage, but she still appeared calm. Beelzebub taunted that she seemed too relaxed despite the imminent purification of her soul by his sacred power and her forthcoming end. Merex warned Emmy not to lower her guard, saying that she did not know what Beelzebub might be planning. Emmy acknowledged Merex's warning. At that moment, the four original demon lords invoked resurrection together. Darkness swirled around them as their appearances shifted. Leviathan's body swelled and multiple tentacles sprouted from his back, his face obscured by a mask. Asmodeus took on a lion-like form with a dark mane growing from his mask. Beelzebub's arms elongated and horns jutted from his mask. Lucifer's body strengthened and his mask covered his face, two large horns projecting upward. Valle faced Asmodeus. Valle demanded to know what Asmodeus had done. Asmodeus replied that there was no need to explain, and that with this form they had once defeated the Thunder God. A companion warned Valle that Asmodeus had never shown this form before and to be careful. Valle was interrupted when Asmodeus struck without giving him time to react. Asmodeus launched a powerful blast that shattered Valle's armor. Asmodeus explained that he no longer needed the spheres. His strength and speed had increased considerably. Valle stood and reactivated his balance breaker, attempting to use divide once more, but the technique failed to take effect. Asmodeus explained that while divide could split and steal an opponent's energy or magic, his current transformation did not rely on conventional energy or magic but on aura, something Valle could not manipulate. Merex noted that Valle was right and that only yokai, who commonly used aura, might understand that distinction. Determined, Valle prepared to finish the fight by unleashing all his power. He recited the chant that announced his awakening as the celestial dragon who challenged divine supremacy, pursuing a dream of becoming the white dragon of supremacy and pushing innocence to its furthest edges. With Juggernaut Drive activated and his dragon form engaged, Valle charged at Asmodeus and rammed him, sending Asmodeus flying. Serafall struggled against Leviathan. His new form was relentless, and without Surzek or Ajuka present she knew she could not hold out long. Leviathan taunted her, saying that this form defined a true demon but demanded the small price of sacrificing those close to her. Serafall refused, stating that she would rather die than sacrifice her sister. Leviathan responded that this was how she would die. He wrapped a tentacle around her leg and an unnatural cold began to spread from the point of contact. The ice was unlike anything Serafall had seen. It locked her limb and left it numb and useless. Leviathan hurled her into the frozen ground, causing her significant pain. Serafall realized she could not withstand many more of those attacks and resolved that if she fell she would take him down with her. Emi unleashed a barrage of sacred magic, but it barely affected Beelzebub. He mocked her and observed that her aura bore a distinctive quality. Beelzebub claimed he could recognize that sacred aura anywhere and insisted, despite Emi's protestations that her current self had nothing to do with her past, that she was the reincarnation of the biblical god and that he had fought her many times before. He predicted that her mind illusion technique would not work because she had not used it from the beginning of the battle, which, he claimed, showed a lack of proper control. Emi attempted to activate her mind illusion, but she immediately felt dizzy. She realized that a strange fog had settled over the area, surrounding them and interfering with her perception. The fog altered the battlefield and blocked the clear activation of her technique. Gregor laughed and explained that, since he had discovered who the other truly was, he had taken measures against those eyes. He revealed that while they fought he had been dispersing a mist from his body that caused intense pain the more someone focused their power on a single point, in this case those eyes. He realized that his identity had been detected because of his sacred aura. Merex urged Emi to attack with caution. Emi agreed, saying they would unleash their greatest attack to dispel him. Merex added that it would be an attack that could not be avoided. Meanwhile, inside the fortress the duel between Tannen and Gregor remained evenly matched. Gregor taunted Tannen, claiming that once he reached the second stage of the curse seal it would be the dragon's end. Tannen replied that he would finish Gregor before that could happen. In a swift move Gregor threw a sticky moss at Tannen's face, momentarily blinding him and buying just enough time for the marks of the cursed seal to expand fully. Tannen cursed that he could not see, and Gregor declared it was the dragon's end. Just as Gregor finished, a fierce bolt of lightning struck him and left him stunned. Thor revealed himself as the source of the lightning. Tannen, recovering, was astonished to see Thor and asked if he was all right. Thor acknowledged that the ancient demon lords had surprised him with that transformation, but reminded them that he was still a god and would not fall so easily. He called on Mjolnir, covering himself in crackling electricity through his hammer and charging at Gregor. The impact shattered Gregor's left arm and left him incapacitated. Thor ordered Tannen to finish it. Tannen let out a powerful roar that sent Gregor crashing to the ground, nearly defeated. Thor said they should go help the goddess and the others. Gregor began to laugh uncontrollably. Thor asked what was so funny and warned him he would soon die. Gregor, still laughing, told them to savor their last moments and urged them to reflect on their actions. Then Gregor revealed that it would not be them who died but everyone else. His master would devour them all. He said that if he was going to die, the least he could do was give his soul as energy to fully open the rift. Thor lunged to stop him, but Gregor's body vanished and coalesced into a dark light that raced toward the portal. The impact caused a tremendous explosion and the rift widened. They realized that with so much energy pouring in, Ophis would not be able to hold the fracture for long. Thor called to two others nearby, urging them to hurry and help or everything would be lost. Both rushed to assist Ophis, lending their energy and holding the rift at bay. Issei versus Lucifer played out elsewhere. Issei's armor was being struck repeatedly and he could not mount an effective defense. He thought that even while transferring all his boosts to defense they could not withstand the onslaught. The armor was crumbling. His partner Ibu said they had to think of something or it would be the end for them. Issei replied that the form Lucifer had adopted made him incredibly strong and that, if it continued, they might have to use again the power they had been given. Ibu warned not to rush. Issei's body would not hold, and the same consequences that had occurred the last time would happen again. Issei acknowledged the risk but argued that they were about to be killed anyway, and he had an idea to use that power a few more times at least. Lucifer taunted that Issei's attempts were futile and then offered to be generous by explaining how he had obtained his current form. He recounted that it all began when they fell from the heavens of the Elohim. They needed to grow stronger on their own, and it was then that they met an omnipotent being who provided a new source of energy. Lucifer said that he and the others had changed, and thus the race of demons was born. Issei recognized that the omnipotent being Lucifer referred to must be the one who had given him power, the eternal King XX. Lucifer continued that soon after that being disappeared and only his companion remained, a descendant named Lilith. She was beautiful, they married, and together they founded the city of Lilith. The 72 pillars were established along with the underworld. The 4 demon lords were titled, and Lilith became known as the mother of all demons. Issei wondered how that explained Lucifer's power with such a transformation. Lucifer explained that during the war between factions they suffered heavy losses and needed more power. Thanks to Asmodeus's research, they discovered that the power that had transformed them into demons could be drawn from within again to make them stronger, but they would need a trigger, something that would break them from the inside to force an evolution. Issei interrupted, asking what kind of trigger that could be. One of the older demons explained that their ritual required the life essence of those closest to them. He said it was meant to reshape their kind forever. As demons, when they cherished something, they did so for eternity. Another demon reacted in horror, unable to believe what was being described. The elder confirmed that they had sacrificed their spouses and their closest friends, excluding their children, to carry out the ritual, and had sealed the life essence in Leviathan's hidden laboratory when celestial dragons interrupted them. They had left to fight on the battlefield, eventually forming a truce with Elohim. The elder insisted that the atrocities had been necessary for the survival of their race. The listener refused to accept that explanation and called them despicable. A different demon snapped back, calling the listener a brat and insisting they had responsibilities to their kind. Whatever had to be done would be done. The listener protested that there had to have been other ways. The elder demon barked that the listener had no idea of the pain they had endured, and then recounted how they had died and been brought back to this world by a mysterious figure. They had demanded that the figure retrieve the sealed container from the secret lab and embed its power within them. When the listener accused them of helping to destroy everything, the elder said their society was a disgrace and must be erased so they could rebuild their race from nothing using the power their master would grant them. The listener vowed to stop them. Feeling their words were irrelevant, the elder ended the conversation and signaled that it was time to finish the matter. Issei began to gather energy. Lucifer, across from him, concentrated violet energy in his hands. The energy spiraled around Lucifer's arms and he lunged at Issei before Issei could react, smashing part of Issei's armor. Issei's inner title, Security, felt the strength of the blow. Drag, Issei's inner dragon, called out to his partner urgently. Lucifer followed with a brutal barrage. He then gathered both arms and unleashed a massive explosion of energy that hurled Issei away and shattered most of his armor. As Lucifer watched, he felt recognition in Issei's eyes. Lucifer observed that Security's eyes looked familiar and dismissed Issei with contempt. He then gathered more power and sent a huge strike at Issei. Issei managed to rise, lift an arm, and channel a sudden black and gold energy that destroyed Lucifer's attack and struck him in return. As Lucifer recovered, he noticed that one of Issei's fingers was broken and burned. Drag warned his partner that the move had been far too risky. Issei acknowledged it internally, reasoning that concentrating that energy into only his finger reduced its power but gave him more strategic options. Drag agreed but cautioned against carelessness. They had limited chances left. Lucifer taunted Issei and advanced, but Issei kept up his defenses, countering and striking back. Lucifer mocked the disadvantages of Issei's energy by pointing out that only 2 of Issei's fingers remained intact. He tried to finish Issei, but Issei used his entire arm to repel the assault, severely damaging Lucifer's form though not destroying him. Lucifer sneered that unless he completely obliterated Issei's body, any remaining pieces could still be dangerous, while Issei had nothing left to defend himself with. He moved in for the kill, but the mysterious energy struck him again. Lucifer was astonished to see that Issei had used his broken finger to produce that attack, the energy taking on a dark purple hue. Lucifer called Issei mad. Issei declared that he would not fall so easily and would not let those he loved vanish while he still had breath. Dreyg thought it was madness, but Issei refused to stop. They resumed their exchange of attacks. Issei continued to use his injured fingers while Lucifer pressed the assault. Eventually Issei landed a strike with his right arm that shattered much of Lucifer's form. Lucifer demanded to know how long Issei would persist. Issei answered by deciding to end the fight then and there and called to Dreyg for everything they had. Dreyg responded that they would give their all. Issei surged, enveloping his body in power, and launched himself at Lucifer. Lucifer met him with everything he had, producing a tremendous explosion. When the smoke cleared, Issei lay battered and broken while Lucifer was barely recovering, diminished but alive. Dreyg warned Issei to react, and Lucifer stepped forward to land a final blow, but Issei's body began to glow unexpectedly. Lucifer wondered what was happening now. Inside Issei's mind, XX told Issei that it was time to wake up. When Issei came to, he realized he was in a black void and saw XX standing before him. Issei recognized XIX. XIX explained that he had left a fragment of his soul as a safeguard and that Issei had used his power unprepared, damaging his body in the process. Issei responded that he had had no choice. XIX acknowledged that it was natural to try to protect those one loved, but warned Issei to take care of himself as well. Issei admitted that he had no strength left, that his body felt broken, and that he had failed to protect others. XIX offered Issei an opportunity. He said that if he burned the fragment of his soul, he could bolster Issei's body so it could withstand 19's power and would convey knowledge of his abilities, but only for a limited time. Afterward, Issei would have to learn on his own. Issei agreed that they had little time and asked to begin. XIX cautioned him not to rush and added that afterward it would be easier for Issei's body to stabilize and adapt to using not only 19's power but the powers of others within him, though Issei would need a stimulus for that change to occur. Issei said he understood, and XIX began the process. When it finished, Issei stood uninjured but with a changed appearance. His Sharingan shifted into a form resembling the famed Mangekyo Sharingan, and a black and gold aura flowed from him, exerting intense pressure. Lucifer watched in surprise, inwardly noting that Issei had been on the verge of death but now rose as if nothing had happened. XX reassured Lucifer that this time would be different. Issei released his power again, this time without suffering consequences. Lucifer bristled at the familiar but troublesome power and prepared to defend himself. Issei invoked a concentrated flame attack that wrapped around Lucifer like black fire. Lucifer tried to extinguish the flames with his magic, but when that failed and the fire continued to spread, he resorted to a desperate, self-damaging tactic to halt it. The flames persisted and expanded, unnerving him, and he realized that Issei's power had grown far beyond what he had expected. Issei gathered energy and unleashed a new form of his strength, calling upon a crimson armor that encased him and radiated formidable power. He declared that he would end Lucifer now. Lucifer rose and mustered a massive counterattack, aiming to finish Issei with a dark, gravity-like assault. Issei met the attack with a focused, bright red blast that pierced through Lucifer's assault and struck him, producing a tremendous explosion. When the dust settled, Lucifer remained severely damaged and could no longer regenerate due to the extent of the strike. Issei approached. Lucifer acknowledged that Issei had defeated him and said he had one final request. Issei, puzzled, asked what it was. Lucifer confessed that although he had destroyed many close to him, the one he could never harm was his wife, Lilith. He admitted that his previous statements to Issei and the other Maos had been lies. Lilith was sealed in an eternal sleep. He asked Issei to free her and tell her what had happened and that he was sorry. Issei agreed to do so. Lucifer revealed the place where she was sealed, and then his form began to dissipate like dust. Ibu urged Issei that they should hurry, and Issei moved toward the rift to reunite with the others. Emi faced Beelzebub at a distance. She lifted her left hand and drew a great bolt down from the sky. She prepared for the attack, and then summoned a thunder dragon that charged at Beelzebub, the impact tearing the area apart. Beelzebub acknowledged that the strike was powerful and appropriate for her, but with his current body he could regenerate. Being already dead made it easier for him to recover. He laughed at the thought of helplessness. Emmy refused to concede. She summoned her defenses and launched a rapid barrage of attacks at high speed, attempting to overwhelm her opponent. The onslaught shattered Beelzebub's surface defenses and culminated in a tremendous blow that left Emmy unconscious at the bottom of a crater. Beelzebub moved to form a finishing sphere over her, preparing to end her, but a sudden flash of light enveloped her body and halted him. In Amelia's mental space, a red-haired man appeared and told her not to worry, saying she would be all right. Amelia stared, surprised, as the man who called himself her former life explained that he had left part of his essence inside her to help in the future. He said that they were connected. He was one of 2 siblings, children of the eternal Queen of Light. He had inherited their mother's eyes and the powers that came with them, while his brother had inherited a body that held the energy of Solaris, a force as potent as the sun. He recounted that before dying he had felt his brother's passing and suspected that the sky in that parallel universe had vanished. He had been fortunate to be near 2 great beings, Great Red and Meraxes, who had enabled his reincarnation. He believed his brother had hidden Solaris's energy so it would not be lost. He urged Amelia to seek out that mirror world and secure the Solaris energy before it could fall into the wrong hands. An ally announced that they would unlock all of Emmy's power so she could access a stage stronger than the balance breaker for a short time. Emmy acknowledged she understood, and the ally told her to begin. Light faded, and Beelzebub saw Emmy standing there with hair as white as snow and 5 pairs of wings so bright he could not look directly at her. A radiant, sacred aura surrounded her. Beelzebub demanded to know what had happened, surprised that she had not possessed such power before. Emmy raised her head and invoked the diabulous celestial dragon. White armor enveloped her and angelic wings unfurled across her back, exerting a heavy pressure. Emmy indicated she had little time and called upon the evolving sword better half. The weapon of the biblical deity appeared in her right hand, its presence unmistakable. Beelzebub began to identify the sword, but Emmy cut through space with a single slash. She declared that although his body might regenerate, his soul would not, and that this sword would end him. Beelzebub scoffed and launched a barrage of attacks that seemed to pass through her, bewildered by their ineffectiveness. Emmy advanced calmly, her aura growing until Beelzebub trembled and regretted not having finished her earlier. He ascended into the sky and gathered his power to unleash it all. He laughed and threatened that if Emmy failed to dodge, the attack would destroy the space and kill everyone. Emmy replied that she did not care and challenged him to do his worst. Beelzebub released a massive assault called Atomic Burst. The attack rushed toward Emmy, who planted her sword in the ground, brought her hands together, and concentrated her power. She unleashed the Yuggoth cannon, a focused blast that pierced through Beelzebub's power and struck him directly. The impact left him barely visible, and Emmy rose swiftly, using her sword to deliver a decisive, non-graphic finishing strike. She declared that she would purify the soul dominated by darkness and send it back to where it belonged, and then she ended the confrontation. Emmy reflected with surprise at the power she now possessed, aware that it would be temporary, and urged haste toward the others. She set off toward the fortress. Vale faced Amodius. Amodius taunted that this was all Vale could do, and Amodius deftly evaded every one of Vale's attacks. Vale acknowledged that he already knew the situation was dire. Vale began to gather power to unleash it with a great roar, but as Amodius moved quickly and struck, severing Vale's right arm and right leg in a single, devastating blow. Vale fell, his transformation lost, and he lay on the ground gravely wounded and nearly unconscious. Asmodeus pronounced that Vale would die. At that moment time stopped and Vale opened his eyes to find himself in his inner mental space. A large, muscular man stood before him. The man identified himself as Heiser and said he had been the eternal king of time. Heiser explained that he was an ancestor of Lavina Reni and that, before he died, he had sealed his legacy into his descendants until a worthy bearer appeared. He told Valley that the power had passed to him at birth and had been concealed to protect the line, but that now Valley showed the ability to control it. Valley asked for the power to finish Asmodeus. Heiser agreed to grant temporary access but warned that Valley would have to find balance within his body first. Heiser observed demonic blood in Valley and cautioned that when the seal was released, Valley's human aspects would change because Heiser's blood was sacred. Valley would not become a simple hybrid but something akin to a fallen angel. Valley accepted the challenge and prepared to transform. Heiser added that once the seal was lifted he would vanish, and he offered a final farewell while urging Valley to achieve great things. Time resumed. Asmodeus unleashed an overwhelming blast aimed at Valley. Violet energy formed around Valley like a protective arm, and his eyes turned violet as his missing limbs began to restore. 6 pairs of black wings erupted from his back and marks appeared across his face. Asmodeus remarked that Valley had become a fallen angel, and Valley revealed his new name as Diabolus Dragon. Black and white armor coalesced around him, the dark wings spreading like a nightmarish counterpart to a balance breaker. Asmodeus warned he would end the fight quickly and launched a technique he called Chronos Execution. Valley evaded and struck repeatedly, using a temporal jump to move behind Asmodeus and land a series of precise blows. He attacked 5 times in rapid succession, preventing Asmodeus from regenerating, then invoked a final assault he referred to with the command Divide, Divide, Divide. The sequence prevented further regeneration and concluded with a decisive finishing strike that erased Asmodeus from the field. Valley declared that one enemy was down and that the mission needed to be finished. Albion asked about the source of Valley's new power, and Valley told Albion to wait for an explanation later because he could not maintain the transformed state for long. They agreed to head toward the fortress. Elsewhere, Serafall had reached her limit fighting Leviathan and prepared to expend her remaining energy to end the battle. Leviathan taunted Serafall for calling herself a demon lord while appearing exhausted, but Serafall refused to give up. A voice reached Serafall from within. Ophis revealed that she had left a portion of her power inside Serafall to strengthen a single attack and urged her to use it carefully. Serafall acknowledged the gift and resolved not to waste it. As Leviathan moved to strike, a wall of earth erupted and blocked the attack. A mysterious voice observed the scene, and a beautiful purple-haired woman appeared from above, holding a red spear that radiated immense power. She introduced herself as Issei, the Koryu bearer of Bahamut, the Dragon Emperor of Chaos, and declared herself the strongest of the 4 celestial dragons. Leviathan recoiled at the revelation of another celestial dragon and insisted she was the original demon Lord Leviathan, invulnerable so long as her immortal body remained. Issei challenged the claim of immortality and prepared to test Leviathan's resolve. Leviathan unleashed a freezing blast called Zero Burst, but Issei set aside her spear and manifested a pair of gauntlets resembling sacred gear, each embedded with a gem red on the left hand and violet on the right. The confrontation escalated as both fighters readied themselves to unleash their full power. Issei raised her left hand, the glove with the violet gem glowing as her sacred gear activated with the command Reload. The incoming attack was absorbed by the glove and returned, amplified by her energy. Leviathan's shield shattered and her arm vanished. Leviathan swore she would regenerate, but when she looked down she realized her body was not healing. Issei's eyes shifted to a yellow hue, and Issei explained that her gaze could cancel the abilities of anything she looked at. Leviathan stared in disbelief as the effect took hold. Serafall saw the opening and prepared to strike with Ophis's power. Issei warned Serafall to pay attention to Leviathan, and Leviathan turned to see Serafall readying her attack. Serafall invoked the ice god's hammer, drawing moisture from the air into a massive sphere of ice and letting it fall toward the target. Leviathan declared she would not be defeated by that alone, but another voice offered assistance. Issei supported Serafall and the attack multiplied into 2 identical copies. 3 ice assaults struck Leviathan and erased her from view. Serafall thanked Issei. Issei replied that she had only acted to teach a lesson and had no interest in introductions. She said she had come to test her rival, the Bansuri, and was disappointed by the low level of Leviathan and the other celestial dragons. Issei announced she would leave that bored universe and advised them to close the rift quickly or everyone would die, then she vanished. Serafall realized there was no time to lose and hurried to the fortress where everyone had gathered. Inside the fortress, Ophis and the others were at their limit and could no longer prevent the rift from widening. When Issei and the others arrived in their new forms, followed by Serafall, Ophis greeted Emilia with relief and complimented her new appearance. Emilia and a blonde ally exchanged sharp words but were quickly silenced by Tannen, who spoke with grave seriousness about the crisis. Vala noted aloud that he had reached the same stage, referencing what he had heard from their mother. Ophis confirmed she had also learned news through her contacts. Emilia asked what they could do, noting the rift would open in minutes. Ophis proposed causing a massive explosion at the rift, powerful enough to close it. Emilia, Vala, and Issei would concentrate their remaining power and amplify it with Ophis's boost. They discussed the risks. They would have to be close, but Ophis would protect them with a shield and Vala could reduce the blow with his half-dimension. Time was short and there seemed no better option. Thor offered to accompany Emilia, but Ophis advised Thor to stay with the others. Serafall added that if something went wrong, Thor should tell Reyes and the others that she truly loved them. The team resolved not to waste any more time. Ophis and the others formed a protective barrier and moved away from the rift while Issei, Emilia, and Vala prepared. Emilia concentrated her power into her sword, better half, and Ophis boosted their output. They layered shields and dimensional defenses as they closed in. They channeled a single, concentrated strike into the rift. The resulting burst of energy detonated at the gap, collapsing the surrounding area and forcing the rift to begin closing. The others cheered that they had succeeded, but Ophis suddenly collapsed and fell unconscious in Tannen's arms. The group rushed to the blast site, but the area was empty. Serafall spotted a disturbance and found Issei, Emilia, and Vala floating and unconscious, badly injured. She called that they were still alive but being pulled back into the closing rift. Thor urged immediate action, but Tannen warned that any attempt to follow could result in being swallowed as well. Refusing to stand idle, Serafall approached. As she reached them, the rift swallowed Issei, Emilia, and Vala as it finished closing, and Serafall vanished alongside them. Ophis regained consciousness as Tannen and Thor recounted the events. Ophis told the group to keep the situation secret for the moment. She explained her belief that the missing trio was likely trapped in the mirror world, a parallel universe that every world has. She planned to try to contact the dragon goddess of infinity of that mirror world to seek help and asked everyone to remain silent for a week. If she had no news after that time, she would inform the other factions. One of them promised that he would not say anything. The other replied that his father would not find out either. With matters settled, Ophis returned each of them, pulling them out of the dimensional rift. Meanwhile, in the alternate universe, a remote old fortress rang with the thunder of powerful destruction energy. Serches, a man with carmine hair, commanded his sister Reyes to stop using conventional attacks and be unpredictable. Reyes unleashed destruction energy not only from her hands but also from her legs as she trained. Serches reminded Reyes to control her central line. Reyes adjusted her approach and began to attack from both flanks, trying to throw him off balance. Serches pushed her aside with his own destruction power, but she recovered quickly and pressed the assault. He taunted her to break his concentration, and Reyes concentrated her strikes on a single point. Serches cautioned her against focusing too much power in one spot and urged her to shape her energy and surprise him instead. He then formed a whip of energy that wrapped around her and detonated in a dramatic, non-lethal burst, leaving a faint mark on her armor. Reyes acknowledged that the move was new and credited her brother's training for her progress, saying she had already collected many trophies. Serches warned her not to let pride interfere with performance and reminded her of his teachings. To defeat the best warriors she needed 3 elements on her side. Reyes agreed and listened closely, admiring her brother and feeling the need to grow stronger to challenge the elite. Searches advised Rias to weaken opponents before facing them so that defeating the strongest would be easier. Rias praised his wise counsel. At that moment, Ajuka arrived. Searches asked if Ajuka thought his sister was ready for her special mission. Ajuka assured him that she was prepared. Ajuka then confirmed that his team was ready and that their opponents would be taken by surprise.